And welcome to Stormz's Tech Corner, the technical gaming podcast produced by the Dungeon Crawler Network. Join me, Stormzlord, as we journey into all things technical in gaming, whether that be game engines, whether it be tab targeting, whether it be whatever you want to talk about. Let's talk about it. So today we have an interesting topic that's come up before, at least for me. It's a couple of them. One, Hitscan versus Projectile. And as well as we're going to then talk about tab targeting versus action targeting. What you prefer, what you don't like. And that's what really this all comes down to. It's your preference and what developers had to do in order to make this work. Especially in the beginning of gaming, when you're talking, the original Doom, when you're talking Half-Life 2. Again, that was 20 years into it. You still had to compensate for the hardware that was out there. You had to make sacrifices in order for the game to work as best as it could. So one of the things with Doom they had to do is they went with Hitscan, right? We'll talk about Hitscan then, right? We'll talk about what that is. So Hitscan, what is Hitscan? All right, so as Unity is loading up for the example, Hitscan is it's a calculation performed by a group or by a game, to find at what point a ray of light or a line intersects a game object. So that means that it is not slowed down, that as soon as you click the button, automatically this ray shoots out. That there's just no way around that. That's what a hit scan is about. I opened the wrong one, so I'm going to open another project, an asset that I bought, Starfighter. And in this one, they have both Hitscan and Projectile. Again, Hitscan is a ray of light or ray cast, depending what engine you're using and what they call it. It's all the same thing. A line goes out from your weapon to infinity. If it strikes something or collides with something, there's your hit, right? A lot of what we call hitboxes are colliders. Just another name for hitboxes, where you have a light that comes out of your gun, goes directly across, and hits it. You'll notice in this game coming up, what we're going to do is there's several different types. We're going to use the ray gun. We'll show you how that works. Again, this is an asset I bought off the Unity store. I am building a different game from it, but it's one I started from. But they have a really good use of Hitscan. Very obvious that it's Hitscan. So we'll load this. And this is mouse driven, which is one of the reasons I didn't like it. So, all right, so here we go. We're going to go to ray gun. All right, so here's ray gun. Right, it goes right out from the ship. Automatically, it goes in the distance. Right, if there's nothing in the way, like that planet, it's really in the background, so it's not hit. We can still shoot, right? Well, in this game, it overheats too, but we'll talk about that. So this one, in a planet, not going to hit it. Right, it's got to hit an asteroid. Now, if you look at their other games, you have rapid fire, right? Notice it's a projectile. It moves out, it turns with you, right? Bullets are projectiles. All right, so there you go. We have that one. Quad fire, same thing, except there's 4 of them. And then we have the homing missile, another intricate idea here that you can lock onto a target, shoot a homing missile, and then it hits that target. Now, again, you have ray gun, which is your infinite ray of light going all the way across the game. If we stop for a second, you'll notice down here at the bottom that these ray bullets are shooting out. If you notice, there's also some ones I was shooting at before. An interesting thing about all this is you see these, for every bullet in every asteroid, there has to be an object. Now, if you're using projectile, that's why every bullet needs one. Even if you need light, you want to have something you see. That's what they're using here. All right, so there's that one. That's an example of both Hitscan and projectile. An example in other games, and again, the way a developer has to deal with it, or a group of developers, is trying to optimize what you have. So, as an example, Half-Life 2. All right, so they have a submachine gun. In that submachine gun, there's an animation, in the middle of the animation of that gun firing off, they do a hit scan. All right, so that looks like a lag. It's sort of like a projectile, right? It's approximating real life ballistics. That's the whole thing. Games are a property of an example, right? They're an approximate view at life. They're not phenomenal at it. They're good at it. There's totally different things you're doing too. When you're looking at these different types of it, you have to represent the firing effect, as well as you have to represent good ballistics. If you look at some games, some were being tested and some not, they're out there. It's obvious it's a hit scan, right? As soon as you fire, it's across the map and drops somebody. Sniper rifles usually hit scan, even though they don't have to be nowadays. That's the way they started out, especially in the older games. Hit scan was used a lot because of processing power. You didn't have the ability to process all these things at once. For all these projectiles, especially when you get to MMOs, you got to make some sacrifices, right? You're going to make some optimization to make that work. So we've gone in, looked at hit scan, right? So hit scan, again, it's your choice what you like better. It's the developer's choice of what they want to use. It depends, right? If you're using a sniper rifle, hit scan could be okay. If you're doing something like a harpoon, a hit scan is not going to work. You want to have some projectile to it. You want to have some weight. Either way, you're going to look for a box to collide with. Now, what do I mean by box? So when they say hitbox, they're talking about something different. So let me show you what I mean. If you bring up this game, which is the one I've started off, the other asset, this is, well, it's called Space Unity. I'll figure out a better title for it. This, when I start it, you'll see that this yellow box up here starts a field of asteroids that are going to fall upon this city. Ooh, danger, right? So if you'll notice, and I'll turn on my controller here, we can drive, shoot forward, we can shoot, all this sort of stuff. I have different types of weapons, depending, and they work really well. I have projectile weapons. I have other weapons. Notice the same thing is happening, that all these things are showing up on the side. But if we pause it and go to the scene, you'll notice that, and I'll look closer, you have all these asteroids. If you select them all, you'll see their hitboxes, right? So what that means is if I'm firing a ray gun, it'll automatically go out of my ship and go directly to wherever it goes across the screen. If it hits a collider, in the case of this, it will register a hit. If it's a projectile, you have to take into account that it leaves the ship, it moves forward, and if it hits, well, then it collides. Because you'll notice that if we go in, if we look at the laser shot, and I'll go close up on that one, this laser shot, right, has a teeny little hitbox, right? Now, if you look at the projectile or the rocket, that actually has a hitbox because the laser shot is actually ray, even though it's not. It doesn't look like it. It's been simulated so that it's not. Now, the rocket is obviously a projectile. There's a hitbox around it. When that hitbox collides with a hitbox on an asteroid, that's when you'll have your damage, right? Whether it's going to be from, you hitting the collision box, because if you look at your player, excuse me, you'll see the player also has a hitbox. Let me bring up the player. So if you look at the player right now, and he's really teeny at first, let's frame in on him. All right, here's your ship. Your ship has hitboxes as well. Whoops. All right, so I'm going to focus and drive everybody nuts there. So you have a ship, you have a hitbox a little, just barely bigger than the ship. All right, that's one of the tricks as well, is if you want to make it not super easy, but easier on your gamer or your user, you go ahead and you make the hitboxes a little bigger on the targets and make them a little smaller on your user. Again, that's just the way you do it if you want to help them out a little bit. Now, what you can do then is change the size of the hitbox to make it harder or easier, depending how you want to do it. Now, hitboxes, they're the same way, whether or not you're using 2D, 3D. So is ray scan, so is projectile. It doesn't matter what genre it is. Doesn't matter what the physics are. It's how you check for damage. That's what this is all about. So what we'll do is we'll then keep using this one. You'll see that if I take that rocket went flying off. And if you notice the shield here, it has its own hitbox. Now what's going to happen is I can shoot at, using the homing missile or the ray gun, I can shoot at my targets. That's sort of like a drill gun. I have to point where I want it to shoot, but it's not really a ray gun in this case, right? Now, I failed because, well, there's a hitbox around the shield. In this, so if you click on the shield, you'll see there's a hitbox. Right? There's a hitbox around it. The asteroids hit it. They cause damage to the shield. If you hit the asteroids with your hitbox, then you cause damage to the asteroids. That's the way these things work. So whether you're using projectile or you're using Hitscan, you do have hitboxes. Now you have one, you have two, depending how you want to do it. The more precise you want to be, if you want to say there's a headshot, you'd have two hitboxes, a headshot and a body shot. Now I'll bring up another project here to show that in a little bit. But right now, let's talk about this one, right? So we had Hitscan in the first game that we showed, the asset. When you fired that weapon, it went all the way across. Projectile, again, differently. Projectile has some ballistics to it. It's actually a projectile going across the game, and it's going to hit something or not. When it hits something, that's when it's triggered. It doesn't mean it's triggered when you first fire it. It takes it all the way across. Not like Lightspeed for Hitscan. Now, again, it's difficult to match up visuals with hit scans if they're supposed to be projectiles. So you really want to try to do a projectile if you can represent it and it doesn't cause too much lag, right? A good rule of thumb, like if you play Overwatch, which I don't, but if you do, if you notice there are bullets without travel time, that's a hit scan weapon. If there's travel time, that's a projectile, right? For an example, a crossbow. Crossbows, they have bolts. Those bolts travel. Those take time, right? That's going to happen. So that's how it's going to work. We will look at hit scan games as well. We will look at other games that have projectile, but that's how we look at it. That's what happens. You have to pick each one. Now, if you want to take a little more, for instance, with this particular game, I showed you the shield has a hitbox, right? And we had a player. We're going to focus in on the player. Didn't work too well. All right, so here we have the player. We're going to go in. The graphics are weird sometimes, but if you notice in this 3D space, it gets difficult to notice what's where because not everything is where it seems when you're in the back, but that's okay. So look at our player. Here's our hitbox. Where is he? He disappeared again. Whoops. All right, there he is. Now, there's a hitbox, right, that goes over and around. And you can see the hitbox. Now, if you were to go down further into the ship, you would see that there's different pieces. There's the meshes, there's the thrusters. There's the mesh spaceship has a hitbox around it, right? And called the box collider down here on the right. Again, there's really no material to it. There's material to the mesh, but there's not material to the box. All right. Because you don't want it to show anything. You just want it to be there and to look pretty. No, you want it to be there and get collisions. Now, we also have something over here. I have a heart box. In other words, a life, right? A power-up. Now, if you look at that power-up, again, there's lights around it. It looks all pretty and everything, but there's a hitbox, right? So when you put your ship through it, it's going to register. So let's do that. We're going to start the game. Got my controller ready. I happen to know where the hitbox or where the life box is. I'm probably going to make it a little brighter for people to see, but for now, this is where it is. Now, notice we'll come up to it, and you fly into it, and it gets an error, right? That's what I'm working on right now, is how to catch that, right? So we're working through that. You see it caught an error with that. But what it did is it collided. You notice it occurred at the exact moment that collided. The box around the heart box, right, the green box, hit the box around the ship. They had a collision, which caused a reaction. Now, in this particular case, it was the wrong reaction, right? But it was a reaction nonetheless, right? So I'll go through and I'll debug it and I'll work with all that sort of stuff. But that's what I want to have as an effect. Now, what we have are objects, and I have another one to show you. So we'll look at the rocket. Box of rockets. Which rocket? Rocket B, I think. Rocket, whoops, that's not what I want to do. I want to, there it is. Okay, so rocket B is let's get shot out of that ship. Now you noticed that before it had a hitbox on it. It doesn't now, right? So when I generate it, when you press the button and it launches, it's got a hitbox. Now this one is another one. This is another little space rocket that I've actually got the collider on. There's a rigid body on it. There's a box collider on it. There's a bullet script. The bullet script is an interesting script here for when we do projectile or ray. What you'll notice is here, this bullet script, which I didn't write, right? I bought a couple packages and I'm blending them together. I integrate them together. That's what I do. This bullet script, you're telling it whether or not it's a laser, right? No, it's a prefab, so it's not going to work, but you tell if it's a laser or not. If it's a laser, it behaves differently. If it's a laser, it needs crosshairs because you need to have an automatic shot, remember, across space to impact either the wall or the end of the game or another collision box out there or a collider box out there somewhere. It has a velocity if it's a projectile, right? So this is a combination script used for both lasers or ray or hit scans, as well as it's used for projectiles. So what I want to do is open up bullet script. Again, I've tinkered with this. I've gone in, made changes that I want to make. Excuse me, but this is not something that I wrote entirely by myself, because I don't think there's anything that I want to write entirely by myself anymore. I've done enough of that. We're far along. I believe we're far enough along in programming that you can start out anywhere you want. If you want to start out from scratch, what you call scratch, well, then go ahead and do that. If you want to start out and take assets and modify them to do your own thing, that's awesome. That's what I do. But you can mix and match in between too. That's a different story for a different podcast. So we're looking at this script, right? So we said the starfighter, whether it's a laser, if it's a laser, it needs a crosshair. And what we do then is it comes down and it says, okay, so I'm a bullet. Now that bullet script can be on the person, the ship, or an actual laser or rocket or projectile. So if we're a player, this is what we do, right? Now then, else we're not a player. That means we're either an asteroid, we're the shield, we're the city that's floating, we're another ship, whatever we are. First of all, it checks, are you a ray? Right? Because it's going to check for a ray cast. So we're doing that and different things because a ray cast has different math than a projectile. Remember, ray cast is automatic, straight across. Not super easy math, but easier math than a projectile. Projectile, you're talking about is space and time and all the derivatives in between. So anyways, that's what it's going to do. That's what this bullet script's about. And it's on the player. It's on it's actually on the life box. It's on the ship. It's on the shield. It's on all that places because it needs to be there. That's where we're recording damage. And in this case, in most of this game, it's projectile damage or collisions, right? I do have a little bit of hit scan, and that's appropriate to me. I think in space, you're going to have a laser type where it's going to go straight across, but a lot of times it's still going to be projectiles. So the interesting part to me is, how does that projectile work? Well, what did I do? I took a bullet script from an asset. I'm making some changes to make it work a little bit differently, but it's still a projectile, right? It's still got a velocity. That's interesting. So anyway, so we'll talk about that. But we're going to now take a second and look at an example. Bring in Storm Shadow, an AD, don't freak out. Then I have a Nightblade. I'm building another Nightblade for DC, which again, don't freak out. They're not EP, but that's okay. We will survive this. All right. Now for the example. We're going to look at Projectile versus Ray Scan in ESO. I've been around ESO for a while. I am fairly positive there's not Ray Scan in ESO. If there is, I don't know what it is. I know all the stabs use Projectile. It may be a piece of light, but it's Projectile. It reaches out and it collides. If you also look at the arrows, which I'll show you in a second, the arrows are not Ray Scan. Arrows are Projectile. We'll show you that right now. We hit it. Their damage is done, but it's not simultaneous. It's not right away. All right, I've got to jump. Even with the Nightblade launched ambush attack, it's not automatic. It doesn't shoot across the map. You typically shoot a wild distance, but then you have to be able to go in and hit. Same thing with other things here in ESO. You see tab targeting. I've targeted that Zivkin. I can target that Dreadnought. Can't target the Citizen, but that's okay. You can target other players. And what's neat about it is you can also go behind things and still see them. See through the wall. I can see where the Zivkin is. That's helpful in a battle situation where you can tab target someone and then you can see through the wall. Now, what's really interesting is they've made some tweaks lately. These used to be drastically just tab targeting. You'd tab and hit it no matter what. Now there's a fairly good chance you'll miss. Something will happen. It's going to matter. Let me project myself here. But if I'm going to attack this guy, I could do it when he's available. Right? Once he's available, I can attack him. My skills show up. Even though he's tab targeted, if he's behind something, I can't attack him. It won't go around it anymore. So it's a different way of doing it. But again, a preferred targeting is the way I'd look at it, not absolute. If I do it, go up here and attack these two guards, and I'll do that without being attacked, hopefully. You'll see that I've tab targeted one, but I shot the other. So it's a preferred targeting, not really a guaranteed targeting anymore. It used to be. It used to be to see things go around corners and all that, but not anymore. But again, they're doing Projectile. But because they are doing Projectile on most of this stuff, it makes it extremely difficult to optimize, right? Because you've got projectiles, whether it's a sword, whether it's a arrow, whether it's ballista, whatever it is, it's a projectile. It's going to go in and it's going to trek it across the map, whatever distance projectile goes. Now, they don't have all sorts of real physics, but again, this is an MMO. We wouldn't expect it. We'll look at other types of targeting, specifically action targeting, when we come up here. So I'm going to let you go here for this example, and we'll move on to another example. We're going on an example of action targeting once I take care of these guys. All right, so they're dead. We got some trash cleared up here. All right, trash cleared up. All right, well, again, we'll be right back with an example of action targeting versus tab targeting. All right, so we're going to look at next targeting, whether you're tab targeting, whether you're action targeting, whether it's a hybrid or a mixture of the above. Certain games have mixes, certain games have one or the other or both. If you look at Doom, which we'll look at later, Doom has what is called action targeting. If you want to look at ESO has tab targeting, a completely different type of targeting. Usually it's the MMOs that have tab targeting. Action games, driving games, things like that, they don't typically have tab targeting. Usually it's the MMOs that have that type of tab targeting. But there are some that have action targeting as well. Neverwinter, right, online, that has tab targeting. That has action targeting. If you look at Ashes of Creation, they're going to do both. They're going to do tab targeting as well as action targeting and a hybrid, depending where they put it. At least that's what they're saying now. We'll have to work through it and see how they do it. Guild Wars 2 has a mixture of them as well. So it depends on what the developers want to do and what they're looking to do. If you're looking to make the game somewhat less herky-jerky, quick, trigger fingers, then you want to think about tab targeting. But that could change as you go along. Later on in the example, you'll see the ESO has changed tab targeting from what it is now versus what it was before. Tab targeting used to be you could almost shoot around a corner. Even now, you'll still see that happen sometimes, but not as much as it used to. They've gotten different ways of getting closer to not tab targeting as a way of you have to hit them. You see an example as well as when I try to get somebody, I end up hitting the guy next to it, not the person I was aiming at and tabbed on. Usually that's okay. Sometimes it's not. It depends how it all works, right? It's whatever developers want to do. Just like everything else here, we look at the game engine, we look at the physics engine, we look at tab targeting, we look at Projectile versus Hitscan. It's the developer's choice. I don't believe there's one better than the other for everything. It's all based around what you're doing and what the developers want to accomplish. So anyways, I have a game up here that I was going to show you, but I'm not right now. What we'll do next is we'll do an example of both action targeting and then an example of tab targeting. So now we're going to go into something near and dear to my heart. We're going to go into Doom. Doom is awesome. Doom is an action game. Therefore, it is not tab targeting. It's what we'll call action targeting. It is going to, you have to point, you have to shoot, you have to aim. Just pressing a target will not give a preference. And that's the way Doom works, and that's the way it should work, and that's the way it will always work. I'll give you an example. So we got no hair. Okay. We're running around. We're going to jump up. We're going to cross. Whoops. No, we're not. I got lost. Okay. We'll go over here. Haven't played Doom in a while. Really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the Doom Eternal. But let's go ahead. We have the next one. We have the rocket launcher. We have the shotgun. We have the pistol. So if you look, if I aim, I have to aim. It's really loud, so I'll turn it down in my head. I have to aim to shoot. Now this is what it's like. You have to really shoot and run and move. It's action, right? So you're grabbing new stuff. You're moving. You're shooting. You're dying. All that sort of stuff. I'm not the best player. Whoops. And I'm out of ammo. And I'm dead. So, but you notice, within Doom, you have to aim. You have to make sure you're looking at what you're looking at. So I'm going to do it one more time and I'll show you again. You have to aim. Aim to the shelf so I can aim it more instead of running in circles and dying. But the idea is we're not tab targeting. You have to go in. You have to aim very carefully. If you don't, you miss. You miss, you die. That's the way Doom works. All right, so let's get up. Let's grab everything again. Where are we? Okay, we're over here. And I got it. Okay, now if I take it and aim, take them out, right? Now they notice your presence, but you still have to aim. Well, not very well. Oh, and then so you're aiming, right? You can't just tab. Tab does nothing but turn on the map. Now, that's the way this works. A lot of action shooters are this way. You have to aim at your target. So that's enough for Doom. I will then show you some more stuff around action versus tab targeting. So here we are. We're going to look at tab targeting within the Elder Scrolls. I'm going to try and get up to nobles here. And remember, tab targeting is when you take, well, tab, if that's the key you choose to use, and it sets where you're going to shoot at within Elder Scrolls and other tab targeting games. Other ones like other MMOs are tab targeting, or they're action targeting, or they're both. Right? Could be a combination of both. Could be hybrid. Intrepid Studios is working on the hybrid version. Guild Wars 2 is a hybrid version. Neverwinter Nights, excuse me, Neverwinter is just action combat. So, everybody's dead here, Jim. And we're still on LED, so let's find out why. Alright, so here we go. We're going to come up. We're in Nobles. Everybody's still dead here, Jim. And I'm going up here, and I'm going to tab. All right, so you see the white highlight on the Atronach. Now, if I'm going to attack him, if you notice my skills are at the bottom, it tells me what I can use. Now, with the bow, I can attack him. Or if I tab the corner here, tab this guy. Now, notice, it somewhat can still see him, but let's try this. It's not going to shoot, right? It's not shooting the arrow. But if I turn it back to the Atronach and it shoots, see, it shoots, right? So what we have is a situation where that used to go around the corner. Bows used to go around the corner with ESO. You know, bows and any long shot range weapon you have could go around the corner if you had a tab targeted. So that, you know, wasn't great. But like I said, now they've made some tweaks just recently in the last couple patches where tab targeting it's tab targeting. Let's call it a preference targeting. It tells who we want to prefer to be targeted. If I were to go here, target him, and then aim at that guy, it'll shoot the other guy, even though I have the target there. Right? So it's not like it used to. Like it always will shoot at that other person. So be aware, it's sort of preference targeting at this one, not perfect. It's the way tab targeting works. So that's ESO and tab targeting. All right, and this is not my strongest character, but we'll go ahead and go with that. So with that said, that is our real quick look at ESO and tab targeting. So you can go ahead and tab it. If I were to go through here, go in the wall, I still see that person. So tab targeting is helpful for tracking people. It's not necessarily, like I said, a hard target anymore. Now it's more of a preference targeting. All right, one last look that we're going to do here with regards to hitboxes and colliders and how that all works with Hitscan and Projectile. We're talking melee, right? And we're talking, in this case, 2D games. No particular reason, just happens to be a 2D game we're working on as well. If you notice, if we click on a particular 2D object, you'll see that the sliding saw has a hitbox, right? So you see the little green circle? We'll call that a box, but it's a circle. So we'll call it a hit circle. And what that does is that lets us know when this circle collider affects or interrupts the collider around the antagonist. In this case, the antagonist comes in automatically, so I'll actually drag up a piece of her. well, not a piece of her, but I will bring her up onto the screen where she'll fit. If you notice, she has a hitbox, right? So that hitbox, if it were to collide with the hitbox on the saw, death occurs, right? How do we know that? Because on the saw itself, you see the hitbox, and you'll see over here in the inspector that there's a script called damage on touch, right? So just like other games, whether it's 3D or 2D, you have colliders, and in this case, they're projectile or melee, right? So when they touch, there's not a whole lot of physics of things moving around, but if there were, they would be on the sword. But for now, it's just a box, right? A box around the antagonist. Protagonist, yeah, that's the word. Protagonist. Notice it's a little smaller than she is. And then the circle is pretty much the same size as the saw. Give people a little bit of leeway. But there's that how colliders work. When they touch, it fires off the script on the saw, right? Because it's a damage on touch to whom? A target to the player. Right? That's what this is all about. And that's how 2D works. Very similar to 3D. Projectiles, hit scan, whatever you want to do. In this case, we're just doing colliders, right? To me, that's still projectile. It's just one collider hitting another collider. There's no traveling in between the two. They're just connecting. They work the same way. Collision boxes. Collision between the boxes means damage. In this case, because the damage of the box is around each item, there's not going to be any zoned damage. If you wanted to do zoned damage, you'd put a small box around the person's head. You'd put a large box around the body. If it hits the large box, you get so much damage. If it's a small box, you get more damage. It's something you can do, but again, not for what we're doing here. This is a 2D game that we're entering into a Unity contest in the next week. Again, it's all about how colliders work, how Hitscan works, and how Projectile works. All right, so that's our example from the 2D world. All right, this is Stormzlord, and thank you for coming and listening to Stormz Tech Corner. You can follow everything we do over at dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. There you can find links to all of our social media, including Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, blah, 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 whatever you want. Be sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com Dungeon Crawler Network. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Stormz Tech Corner. This week we looked at action targeting, tab targeting, hit scan, projectile, and all the above as you try to fit them into your game or any game that you like to play. Again, it's all preference. Whether you like hit scan, whether you like projectile, whether you like action versus tab, it's up to you. You can play what you want to play, or if you develop, you can develop what you want to develop. It's all preference, and you do what you want to do. All right. Thanks again. Have a good time. Thank you. Bye.